courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 499. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek, DV3 in our forum, and DV3G and DV384 on X. Derek, glad to be on the mics with you as always. What's going on this week?
A lot of basketball gaming, Andrew, per usual. And can we just start off the show talking about how awesome NBA 2K14 Blacktop is? Everything from the graphics, the overall lighting, the gameplay, the presentation. And I uploaded a video to the NLSC YouTube of me playing against the computer 5-on-5 on 2K14 Blacktop. And I had Jamal Crawford, Vince Carter, Gerald Green, Amare Stoudemire, and JaVale McGee, an all-dunking team outside of Jamal Crawford. But you need a player like Jamal Crawford for the dribble flash, right? For the flashy passes and the cool stuff he can do.
Sure.
You know, he's not.
And he can throw it down. He can throw it down too.
Oh, yeah. He can definitely throw it down. He's just not on the tier of the other guys.
Yeah.
There. And I just had an absolute blast. And a lot of people commented on the video talking about how great the game looks and, you know, how good the action looks and everything. But, yeah, 2K14 Blacktop, amazing stuff.
I hope that Jasmine is listening to this because we used to rib John about his love of Blacktop. And it was never a mode that I really played. I mean, I want everyone to have a great time on the virtual hardwood or Blacktop and be able to enjoy the modes that that appeal to them the most. But yeah, I've actually got into Blacktop a little bit, and we've connected to play on both the PC and the PS4, or rather the Xbox One version, same version, but obviously Xbox through the Xbox Companion app. And yeah, that mode is a lot of fun. On one hand, and I mentioned this in the forum when you posted the video, that it's a shame that those players, the top-rated players that is, are locked, and they're locked by VC. So now that the servers are offline, there's no way to unlock them with any VC. You can only earn VC in My Career and My GM, the offline version of it. You can't earn offline VC to unlock the players in Blacktop. That is a very poor design choice, at least as far as giving fairness and functionality to the gamer. But in a way, it can actually be more fun playing without some of those top-rated players. Because obviously there's still a lot of great players still available. But take out those top-tier players, and you can get creative with those teams.
Yeah, I agree that it's a poor design choice. But the team that I assembled, it's Gerald Green throwing a pump fake on the three-point line, getting the defender up in the air, and then posterizing somebody with a one-handed jam at the rim. It's Vince Carter getting out on the fast break and throwing it down on somebody. It's JaVale McGee getting his, back to the basket, leaning, doing like the Jordan Kobe lean, and then spinning into the center of the lane and throwing it down like a monster one-handed jam. It's, going behind the back and then crossing over with Jamal Crawford and, finishing with a flashy layup at the rim. Like, I agree. I love the combination of players that you're kind of forced to put together. It's not always the top tier stars in the league. Sometimes it's players past their prime, like really good players like Vince Carter and Amare Stoudemire at that point, or, young, exciting players that hadn't fully hit their prime, etc. But it is a fun thing to do, like to put the teams together and experiment. Also, you got to just, later in the show, we're going to be talking about the worst basketball mechanics of all time in different NBA Lives and NBA 2Ks. NBA 2K14 did not make my list for worst mechanics.
No, rightfully so.
Just the dribbling is so fun and so sound and makes sense. Amazing foot planning in that game. Just the players keep running on the fast break and they run their lanes properly. The throwing alley-oops, as you know from doing your My Career, is an unbelievable joy, right? Whether I'm throwing it to Gerald Green on the fast break and Blacktop, or you're throwing it to Terry Hansen from, close to half court and he throws it down with a reverse slam oop. Like, the mechanics are so good. And then, there was a play there where I got 2 blocks in a row on a possession with JaVale McGee, and the blocks are super organic in that game. I think you would agree. Like, they don't feel canned at all. like they do in like NBA Live 19, NBA 2K23, etc. The blocks feel amazing. It has a great steal system, poke steals, when they have the ball in hand or if they put the ball on the floor or if you sneak into the post and get a steal from the back or the front on the guy posting up when he's not paying attention. Like, great mechanics. That game also has awesome shooting mechanics, shooting feel. And it's probably, in my opinion, 2K14 through 2K17 might have the best shooting mechanics in 2K's history. Like all 4 of those games. With 2K16 out of those 4 being probably the worst, but it's still decent and better than 2K24, obviously. But yeah, 2K14 Blacktop, I'm going to have to revisit it more and upload more footage.
Well, that's what we said last week when we talked about the best mechanics, when we took the best mechanics from the games that we would choose to have the best mechanics in different categories and put them together. Last week's show, episode 498, obviously, we said 2K14 to 2K17 was our ideal for a lot of categories for 2K. And yeah, not a lot of things from those 2Ks for us are going to make the worst list this week. I actually uploaded a one-on-one with Flavor Flav from of all things from 2K6, the Entertainers Basketball Classic, the EBC, the Road to the EBC mode, kind of a precursor to my career. And there are celebrity games. One of them is against Flavor Flav, so I thought this would be a fun one to record and throw up there. And it is funny because 2K6, despite having what I wouldn't call great dribbling mechanics, or dribbling controls at least, I do like the way the game feels, if nothing else. If not, I can sort of work with those old isomotion controls. They're not my favorite controls, but I do love that game. So it is interesting how sometimes these games can have these flaws, yet you still do enjoy them so much. 2K14, though, very strong across the board. Most of the flaws with 2K14, this is the PS4 X1 version, obviously, the lack of deep roster editing, not being able to save multiple custom rosters, obviously, and some of the lack of depth in the modes that would come, and some of it was taken out from the prior gen version, and some was yet to come in future games. But there's a reason I'm still stuck on 2K14 all these years later, Derek.
I gotta say, though, you have been really into 2K6, and this isn't like a fleeting moment for you. It's been a few months now where you keep going back and playing that game, whether it's using unlockable Legends teams or it's, using the regular teams, or like you did, playing some of the scenario mode and whatnot. Like, you are into that game. Now, me personally, I have quite a few issues with some of the mechanics in that game. I think dribbling is pretty rough, even with that ISO motion system. And I can do stuff, but it's just definitely not one of my favorite 2K dribbling systems. And I think that the passing, there's a lot of telegraphing in that game. There's a lot of errant passes that that get intercepted, where the ball just kind of transfers to the opponent, to the defender.
Agreed.
Like passing can get super frustrating in that game, because you can do something as simple as try to swing the ball to a guy who has a defender 4 or 5 feet off of him, and somehow the defender will transfer to the ball, he'll steal it, and they'll go down the other way. I also think shooting is very limited in that game. Like, I feel like you don't have a lot of options shooting the ball as far as like different off balance animations and whatnot. And then any off balance animations you do, you feel like you're going to get blocked pretty much every time because of the release point and how slow that animation is. So I have some issues with 2K6 on 360 from a frustration perspective. Like, I think there's frustrating gameplay mechanics, but I have had fun with that game, and I see why you like it.
Oh, I mean, I absolutely share those frustrations. In fact, I said in my retrospective a few weeks back that it's one of those games where I can be extraordinarily frustrated with it one moment and think, oh, why am I playing this? This is my last game of this. And then a string of great plays will happen. Some great fun plays will just happen. And, okay, this is why I enjoy this game. But there are definitely some frustrating moments to 2K6. But, no, it has become a favorite. There's just something about it that draws me to it. I think I'm maybe getting into that stage where I'm feeling a bit of nostalgia for the mid-2000s. Obviously, you and I have a lot of nostalgia for the 90s, but the games and the NBA of the mid-2000s are quite in the rearview mirror now, actually. So that nostalgia is definitely a part of it. But it's a strong game across the board. And look, I've warmed up to Live 06 for Xbox 360 as well, but it is not nowhere near as deep a game as 2K6 with its features. But it is a pretty good game on the 6, as we've said before, so it has been fun, obviously, revisiting these games as I've built my collection in recent years, playing these 2K games that I didn't grow up with or didn't play when I was really getting into content creation for the NLSC in the early to mid-2000s, after I took over in 2001, of course. So that has been very rewarding. And yeah, it's obviously given me an insight that I can I can talk about these other games apart from just live.
There's something extra special, too, about revisiting games that were the first on their generation of consoles.
Agreed.
Like NBA 2K6 on Xbox 360, it's fascinating to see what they were doing from a graphical perspective, from a gameplay perspective, how it compared to the last gen version that was also released for that year. What they were doing with modes, content in general. Same thing with NBA 2K14, right? For PS4 and Xbox One. It is fascinating to see how they came out of the gate on those new gen consoles and what they were doing different and how they were trying to wow people and whatnot. And same thing with NBA Live 2001. Not one of my favorite games. Sorry, Nate and Roger. I think it's incredibly rough. A new motion system, new gen, etc. But it is wild to look back at what they did with NBA Live 2000 and then what they tried to do for a jump with NBA Live 2001, which in many, many, many ways, Live 2001 doesn't play as well as Live 2000, in my opinion, right?
Absolutely.
So that was kind of backward steps for EA Sports NBA Live. However, I can still have fun with Live 2001, and it's still fascinating. It's just, for me, it's not even close to as good as Live 2000.
No, I would definitely agree. And it did come down to them losing some people from the team, having to rebuild, going to the new programming language, and having to rebuild from scratch almost. So you can see why it happened and why it took them a couple of years to really get things going from the field. 2002 is also quite rough, and still trying to get that motion working, the player movement working as well as they would finally get it in 2003 and the next few years after that. Although 2004 also brought in the 10-man freestyle, so it actually brought in a new system right after 2003, and it did work quite well. Obviously, 2004 is a great release, but it is possible to enjoy the rougher releases. We're going to be talking about NBA Live 07 this week. That is one that is harder to enjoy, Derek.
Oh my God. When we get into that, we might both need to just have a big venting session because that second half that we played was, I don't often want to throw my controller.
You
but
attempted.
I was like, God, this game is driving me absolutely nuts. Before we get into that, let's talk real quick about our NBA Jam on Fire edition session.
Of course, yeah.
Where we were using the amazing John Z1 Classic Teams roster. And we were using Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, and Kevin McHale, and we were against Magic Johnson and Kareem or James Worthy on the Lakers. So, a classic 80s matchup, Celtics-Lakers. I was controlling Bird. You preferred controlling Parrish, and I don't blame you because somehow you were crossing up the computer with Robert Parrish from the perimeter and then throwing it down. He was also a lot more effective than McHale on defense.
Easier to block, absolutely, yeah.
In that game, and you had big impact on defense with Parrish, much bigger than you did with McHale. I was proud of how we fought through that adversity in that win we had against the Lakers. And the last 3 possessions of that game are in the top 10 plays of the week this week. And it was Larry Bird with a steal and a finger roll, you pushing down the computer on the next possession, because the score was 44-40. We were down by 4, and there was about 20 seconds left. And we didn't give up, which is typical of us. We just won't give up. So it was, Larry with a steal, a finger roll, then you push down the computer. And while he was down on the ground, I stripped him, which is a great strategy in that game. And I got a steal, and then I scored again with a running one-hander with Bird. And then on the last possession, they passed it in, and I was able to get a quick steal, and I was on fire at that point. And I hit a 3 right in Magic Johnson's face. Buzzer went off, and it was a game winner. And that game produces moments like that. NBA Jam on Fire Edition, possibly the best arcade basketball video game of all time. When we had the NLSC tournament and it was me and Stildo 33 in the finals, he was using the Celtics, I was using the Blazers. There were so many intense moments like that. Ridiculous comebacks. He hit a game winner in that series against me with Larry Bird that won him. I want to say it was game 4 of that series. And he was on the phone with me and he was screaming.
That's right.
He was absolutely ecstatic about hitting that game winner with Bird and making that comeback that he did. But what a great session. What a great video game. And I just can't say enough good things about NBA Jam on Fire Edition.
And of course, John Z1's work that he's done with Legends on Fire Edition and the 2023 update. And what I like about that Legends on Fire Edition mod is that it is similar to a ROM hack in that it is for experienced NBA Jam players, NBA Jam on Fire Edition players, and people who want something new and people who want a challenge, because it is definitely tuned to be challenging. I mean, you've got the Legends team, so everyone is a high-rated Legend, obviously, but the CPU is merciless, and yeah, it's just such a great challenge. It did take us a couple of games to get that one, but we were not going to give up. As you say, we do not give up. We were going to get that win, and to get that in such dramatic fashion, with you making those clutch steals and those clutch shots, and just being Larry Legend in the fourth like that. Yeah, and to hit the game winner when you're on fire, just such a fantastic visual. Check it out in the top 10 plays, absolutely.
The best arcade/street games I've ever played in a co-op fashion are NBA Jam on Fire Edition and NBA Street Volume 2.
Yeah.
Because on both those games, the mechanics are so sound, and you really, really have to work together and work together well to play well and get a win. And, you'll see me dribbling beyond the three-point line with Bird waiting for you to push your guy down so you can get leverage for an alley-oop, right? We recognize when a shorter player is on, say, Larry Bird or whatnot. So if a shorter player is on you, you have a better chance of getting that three-point shot off, right, with a solid release. So we recognize that, and we'll go to that. And then defense is such a team effort. Somebody's got to be guarding out on the perimeter, and somebody's got to be guarding the paint, protecting the rim. And I think that those two games are just so fun from a co-op perspective, and that will never get old for me. Those two are go-tos with the Parsec community and with you. Like, I love both of those games.
And what do we say all the time about what makes a great game is that it's fun to play at both ends of the floor, right? Sure, every game it's fun to score and just rack up points, but if you're basically just standing around on defense, hoping that they miss, hoping that you can get the rebound, that's not fun. You have to be able to play defense.
Street Volume 2, Andrew, has some of the best defensive mechanics in basketball video game history. So, catching shots out of the air and it feels organic, swatting shots off of the glass,
yes.
Just like sending people to their knees with blocks at the rim. Oh my God. Like, the defense mechanics on NBA Street Volume 2, just thinking about it makes me want to run in and play right now.
So you and I have both been uploading videos lately. We've actually both got more videos in the works. We've been playing sessions together, playing sessions separately, and have that footage to put together. I have another 2K6 game. I've got some 2K14 games with 2024 rosters, off-season rosters that I've cobbled together in the PS4 version. That was fun to play with. I didn't update the ratings, but it still worked out pretty well, as you'll see. A makeshift 1995 Bulls team versus 95 Magic that ended in pretty spectacular fashion. So those will be going up on the channel soon, and of course we'll be connecting as always, and I'm sure that's going to produce even more highlights. And that's as always, that is fun to share with our viewers and listeners, Derek.
It doesn't get much more nostalgic than number 45 MJ.
Yeah.
In his 95 return. Yeah, no, we got a lot of content to share. We appreciate all of your interactions with our content, whether it be on X, YouTube, Facebook, etc. So thank you for that. But before we get to the worst basketball video game mechanics of all time, Andrew, let's talk about your NBA 2K10 roster release.
Oh, I released a mod, yeah. Yeah, it's the... what was the name I gave it finally? The fixed final NBA 2K10 official roster, not the not the most clever of names, but basically that's what it is, a fixed version of the final official roster update for NBA 2K10. It adds missing legends like Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, Reggie Miller, Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, to name a few. It also goes through and fixes up the ratings and tendencies for all of the original legends. They were a mess, basically, a lot of copy and paste jobs, wherever you heard that before with legendary players in 2K, and assigning tendencies that were either blank or, again, nowhere near appropriate. So those have been fixed up. A few ratings of the current players have been fixed up. Dirk Nowitzki was rated lower than Jason Kidd, which by that point you definitely would not. That was definitely not accurate. So fixing a few ratings like that stood out to me, clearing all of the injuries so that you can basically customize the rosters further. So that's put out there as kind of the definitive fixed, unofficial fix for the official rosters. And yeah, I'm putting it out there for people who want to enhance the retro gaming experience or use it as a base for future retro modding projects. So yeah, I'm very pleased to finally get that out. It's been in the works for a while, on and off as I've juggled other projects. So I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing more people playing with it.
I love 2K10, and I'll probably be installing that mod today after we record the show. And like we've talked about before, NBA 2K10 is kind of forgotten about sometimes because of the greatness of 2K11.
Sure.
And then obviously 2K12 was also amazing. But yeah, I do love that game. I also wanted to give the community a quick update on the mini PC that I talked about on the last NLSC podcast. So tried some different things with it, and here's what I found out. So 2K19, 2K17, 2K16, 15, etc. Those PS4 gen NBA 2Ks. I got them all running on medium-high settings, which is console and often like console quality and often better. Running smooth 1080p, 60 FPS. I got all my stuff backed up from my main computer related to like my Ultimate Classic Teams roster on 2K17, the retro rosters on 2K19, all of that stuff. Perfect. Love it. Awesome mini PC for that. Got NBA 2K14 and 2K13 installed. Obviously, those are PS3 gen titles. They work on the highest settings, perfect 1080p, 60 FPS. Amazing. I got UBR for 2K14 on there now and URB for 2K13. Beautiful. The issue that I've noticed is it struggles with the PS3 emulator for some reason. And the only way that I was able to get it to work at perfect 1080p at 60 FPS is actually doing 540p in the settings for the resolution, upscaling to 1080p, turning anti-aliasing off, and putting the shader quality on low. That sounds like a lot, and it does degrade the quality a bit, but I was able to get smooth performance after that. But I'm going to tweak with the settings a little bit more. But yeah, it seems to struggle a bit with RPCS3, and that does bum me out. But I wouldn't be using this for that anyway, really.
I mean, for a mid-level PC, these are the things that you sometimes have to do. And the fact that it runs that well, that you have those options, is still pretty cool, because when PS2 emulation first came to PC, you know, you had to have a pretty high-end PC to actually get decent performance out of the emulator as it tried to emulate the PlayStation 2 hardware. So the PS3 emulator does work a little bit better. So the fact that you do have those workarounds is really cool to hear. But once again, a great budget PC for entry-level gaming, a backup system as you have it. And yeah, what a great D's deal.
Yeah, I love it. Under $300 for that. I did notice that with a game like Dark Souls 3, because it's a little bit more intense graphically than the PS4 2Ks, that I had to put it down to 720p, and then it ran completely 100% smooth 720p at 60 FPS. But again, under $300 PC as a backup, that small size of a calculator, weighs as much as one. Yeah, it's really awesome.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, in honor of the main topic today, which is the worst basketball video games of all time, we decided to dust off NBA Live 07 for the Xbox 360 and NBA 2K18 for the PC. Our first session was on NBA Live 07, and we used the great mustachio, the legendary Adam Morrison, and his primo Brezza.
Two-time NBA champion Adam Morrison, thank you very much.
Yeah, my apologies. Yes, he is a two-time NBA champion. Just like Jeremy Lin is a one-time NBA champion with the Toronto Raptors, right?
Indeed.
Same. They both have rings. So that Bobcats team is interesting. They're not too bad for a video game. It's Raymond Felton, Gerald Wallace, Emeka Okafor protecting the rim, Primo Brezic. We got Sean May on the bench, Brevin Knight. It's not the Bobcats team that's frustrating. It's that damn game, Andrew.
Yeah.
It's the worst animations I have ever seen in a AAA basketball video game. It makes NBA 2K18 look like the greatest basketball video game of all time. I'm going to say it. NBA 2K18 from an animation perspective and enjoyment perspective, just the overall quality of NBA 2K18 is that much better than NBA Live 07. It's so bad. Now, we went against, in that session, the Pacers, and not the Paul George Pacers. This is back NBA Live 07 people, so this is the Jermaine O'Neal Pacers, and he absolutely ate us up, obviously with about 15 awkward dunks right underneath the hoop, where he's going through the backboard and rocketing all over the place and doing things that no human could do imaginable, because you can't move your body like that. But yeah, he absolutely destroyed us. And I want to say we were down by 3 at the half. And then Andrew and I, at the same time, got so sick of this game that we lost by 30. Like, anything that we did good in the first half, none of that happened in the second half. I just decided to start, using Adam Morrison pretty much every possession, trying to do like fadeaways, which looked terrible in that game. And you were trying to just do freestyle superstars on every single possession. That game is so frustrating. Like, what the heck were they thinking?
It's just funny how quickly it just went straight down the toilet, frankly, because we did play a pretty good first half. That is probably the worst half of virtual basketball that we have played together. Not surprising. The Bobcats obviously were not the best team to. They're not the easiest team to play with. They're not the best team to use for if you want to win. Obviously, Adam Morrison is there, so they were an attractive option for us to use for that reason. But that was rough. Everything we tried. Driving the lane, trying a pro hop, or even just trying a crossover, just getting stripped on every possession, or getting bumped and stripped. Meanwhile, they're just getting all kinds of shooting fouls at the other end.
The charges, Andrew.
The charges, yeah.
The charging fouls in that game are absolutely insane, and they are constant. Like, you will not do a charge. Like the guy will be on your side, and they'll just call a charge. I think Adam Morrison had like 4 fouls early just on like BS charge calls.
Yeah, a couple of bad reach-ins as well. Like, it felt like we couldn't do anything without getting a foul call one way or the other, and the CPU was just handing itself all these foul calls, on top of being able to hit shots while we're missing because of the horrible shooting mechanics, because we're getting to the hoop. Missing that wide-open dunk with Adam Morrison. Just jamming it right into the front of the rim.
You like how I replayed that for you 10 times?
No, I appreciate it.
I wanted you to sit there and just like steam over that completely wide open missed dunk.
I mean, you got to laugh. There's also at some point you got to laugh at it. So
there's airball dunks in that game. Like, there were airball dunks where the guy didn't even make contact with anything, and then the ball dropped to the floor, and the players are just like scurrying around like ants. Like, it's really weird, and they can't pick up the ball unless like they're right on top of it. So the mechanics are like, graphically the game is okay.
Yeah,
for the time,
yeah.
Like, graphically it's fine, but there's so many glitchy animations. The jump shots are so glitchy. I don't even think you could call that game 30 FPS. I'm leaning towards 50.
Oh no, it's not. It's they didn't get to the 60 FPS until NBA Live 08 on that generation. Anyway,
no, I don't think it's 30. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm sorry. Like, the animation transitions, Andrew, are the worst in basketball video game history.
You can sometimes get something that looks kind of, I don't want to use the word realistic because that sounds too kind, but you can get something that looks, for the time, okay if you approach it from the right angle and there's no one in the way and you're wide open. Of course, then you might just miss the wide open dunk anyway. But if you get it from the right angle and it triggers the right animation and all the stars align, you can get something that looks not totally terrible. Not great, not good, not totally terrible. But for the most part, you're getting all kinds of weird animations. There's not enough animations for moves under the rim, which is why they're jumping to dunk on the other side of the rim and jumping through the backboard. If you can believe it, I played an even rougher version of Live 07 at the community event. It was in even worse shape at the very first community event I went to. I spent most of my time with the Xbox version because it was going to be the one that we were getting on PC, and being such a PC and modding-oriented community, that's what I was kind of looking at the most. And I didn't have a 360 at the time, but I also spent some time with the 360 version. So yeah, if you can believe it, I actually played a rougher version at the community event where jumping to the side and then warping backwards, even more so to get the dunk, and no nets on the rim, and just sort of seeing what it was kind of going to be like. But they say, oh no, it's still fairly rough. We're still working on it. It's still a fairly early build. It's still a few months away because it did come out later than the prior gen version. But yeah, that did not turn out well. Horrible turning point for the NBA Live series. People point to Live 06 on 360. That had its issues, lack of depth mainly.
That though, they could have rebounded from
absolutely. If they'd stayed the course, if they'd kept that motion system, if they kept that engine and built on that, they could have easily. You bring back Dynasty Mode next year, All-Star Weekend and everything. That's a very solid game to build upon.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say that finding a good animation in NBA Live 07 is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
There might be one good animation out of 100. Like, it's that poor. Number two, NBA Live 07 for the PC, Xbox, and PS2 is way better than that 360 version. Way better, because it still has a lot of the bones from NBA Live 06 in it, right? From a player movement perspective, from an animation perspective. That 360 version is just absolutely the worst. So our next game was on NBA 2K18, and we used the Thunder with Russell Westbrook and Paul George. And we went against young Jokic and the Nuggets. And one thing that we pointed out was that none of the players that are on the Thunder in that game are on the Thunder now, which is kind of funny. Not that long ago.
Or even in the league, for that matter.
Or even in the league. The majority of those players are not even in the league. They're either retired or they're just not good enough to be in the league anymore.
They're elsewhere.
Exactly, right. And like I said, NBA 2K18 looks like the greatest basketball video game of all time after playing Live 07. And in the last 3 quarters of our 2K18 game, we put together some decent highlights with Westbrook, Paul George. Even a couple nice things happened with Andre Roberson, Steven Adams getting some offensive rebounds and doing some really nice-looking jams under the basket. Had a couple nice defensive plays, etc. 2K18 is super rough. It's arguably the worst or one of the worst basketball video games in the 2K series, but we did manage to have some fun in that game.
Well, here's the thing. 2K18 is one of the roughest, worst releases, certainly of its generation within the 2K series, but it is a far more competently made basketball video game, to say the very least, than Live 07. There are issues because it's going from that great motion system from 2K17 and earlier that we loved. It does have the issues with the shooting mechanics and so forth, but it is playable, to say the very least. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time with it. Well, that is to say, I put it down very early. I spent a considerable amount of time trying to enjoy it and then put it down very early in its life cycle and haven't really revisited it that often since. But it is a far more playable game. Putting together those highlights, that is a game that we could conceivably play. I'm not suggesting that we do, but it is one that we could play more frequently if we wanted to. We could try and make the best of it much easier than 07. It is a much better made basketball game than 07. Low bar, I know. It is way above 07. But like you say, what a palate cleanser after playing Live 07.
Yeah, Andrew messaged me after the first quarter of our 2K18 game where we just noticed like a ton of skating, like super amounts of skating, and the slow motion side by sides, and a lot of the canned moments that weren't in 2K17. And Andrew says this is certainly no 2K17
Yeah.
because if you remember correctly, we had a couple of recent sessions on 2K17 and we had an absolute blast. My opinion on 2K18 when I revisit it is. I actually enjoy it more than 2K24, and we're going to get into that in a minute. So I'm starting to think that 2K24 for the new gen, so for Xbox Series X and PS5, might be right up there with my worst hated NBA 2K of all time.
I'd agree. I would actually agree. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I don't want to put it on. The shooting is actually a lot better in NBA 2K18. The ball does not warp as much on dribbles. There's not as much suction in it. Sure, the skating is really poor in both games. It's probably a tie, to be completely honest with you. But I actually can go back and enjoy 2K18 more than I enjoy 2K24. So, Andrew, before we get to the community's responses about their worst shooting mechanics of all time and tying, past NBA 2K and NBA Live games to them, why don't we give our responses?
Sure. So I've been thinking about it, and obviously we've been playing those two games today, and shooting. I've not been a fan of shooting in pretty much every 2K of this generation, of the PS5, Xbox Series X generation. So I would pretty much say anything from this generation. Of if I had to pick one, probably 2K21 when they were trying for the shot aiming. I just don't think worked out anywhere near as well as what they did in 2K17. And dribbling, again, I just don't like the feel of both play and movement with or without the ball in on this generation. So again, I'd have to give it to the current generation with it, and driving as well. Passing, probably maybe the mid 2000s 2Ks, 2K6 I can make it work, but like you said earlier, just some of the interceptions and the catches and moving players out of position, not as heavily as in some of the worst passing in NBA Live, but still kind of there. Steals easily, again, this generation. 2K24, you can take your pick. 2K21, 22, 23, 24. Blocks, I'd have to say 2K13, simply because you can't block dunks, or they happen very, very rarely at any rate. Overall play movement, I just don't like the way players move. As I said, in the current generation, it feels like I'm trying to maneuver a Mack truck on a dime. So, I'm just... They just feels heavy, and you do need the heft to make sure that players can't water bug around and skate around as much. But it just doesn't work out to me. It's not to my taste. The players just feel too heavy these days.
So you and I, once again, share a lot of the same opinions and tastes when it comes to, past basketball games. So for 2K titles, shooting, NBA 2K24, I despise it. I loathe it. I feel like shooting is so frustrating on all-star or higher. And even when you're playing on the lower difficulty levels, you don't feel like you're actually in tune with the shooting, like like that you can find, an optimum release point or anything like that. Shooting doesn't make sense, and it's super frustrating, whether it's on the move, whether it's standing straight up and down, whether you're in the post. Absolutely hate it. Dribbling, I would say 2K24. And basically this gen of 2Ks, but basically the ball warping is so ridiculous. And the speed of which players' arms move when they're doing their dribbles, and then the momentum that you don't intend to do on your dribbles, but the game forces you to do like momentum dribbles and whatnot. I think that the dribbling is super frustrating overall in the newest 2Ks, so from 2K21 to 2K24, but I labeled 2K24 as the worst for now. And when I'm talking about dribbling, I'm talking about since right stick implementation, Andrew. So 2K13 and up. Passing, just the amount of times where you do make a good pass from a realistic basketball perspective, but it gets picked off because somehow the computer transfers to the ball. Even doing something as simple as like a post-entry pass is just an exercise in frustration. So 2K6 is the worst for me. Driving, it's a toss-up between 2K21 to 2K24, but specifically, again, 2K24, I think driving to the hoop is super frustrating because of all the suction, and 2K18 because of the blow-bys. The blow-bys and the slow-motion side-by-sides in 2K18 are really poor, and that's one of the downfalls to the gameplay in the 2K series is that implementation that started with that new motion system. With 2K18 steals, I'm just going to go like what you said, 2K21 to 2K24. Once again, specifically 2K24 after the patches, where it really is just bam, press steal to foul, right? Blocks, with you on that, 2K13, because you can rarely ever block a dunk. And whenever you go up for a block and you've timed it properly, when somebody drives to the hoop to do a layup, the game auto-adjusts that layup so your hand misses it. And there's also been footage that I've shared in the past where I will actually get my hand on the ball, and instead of them allowing me to get the block in 2K13, my hand is like inside the ball and the player still finishes it.
Yeah.
Super frustrating. And then overall player movement, this one might surprise you, but I'm actually going to go with 2K20. It's that unbelievable, awkward, hunched over running that looks so stupid. And all 4 or 5 players are doing it on the floor at once sometimes as they try to get up and down the floor. What were they thinking with that? And just the overall change of direction in that game and the way that looks, and just the way even trying to string together moves look, and that silly step back that every single player can do and looks exactly the same all the time. 2K20 is probably the one that's the most frustrating to look at for me. On the sticks player movement, the worst might be 2K24.
Oh, I see where you're coming from on all of those. And that's a great point that you mentioned about dribbling, because when I said 2K24 or recent games, I'm, of course, talking about with the right stick dribbling. Pre-right stick dribbling, I could give that to pretty much any 2K. I'm just not a fan of the isomotion approach. I think that it was the one thing that Live had over 2K for many years, even after it was going downhill for so many years and struggling to and losing ground to 2K. The one thing that it was doing better was dribbling controls by having those right stick dribbling and other right stick controls. That 2K was doing some nice things with the shot stick, which came in 2K6, but not having that right stick dribbling and just having to do those automatic moves by holding an isomotion button or holding sprint and just moving the left stick. I see what they were going for, but it's just not as intuitive as giving you control over your hands with the right stick and player movement, basically moving your feet with the left stick and moving the players' hands, controlling their hands with the right stick has just worked out so well. There's a reason that 2K adopted it finally, and why it's been so good for so many years, or it's certainly been preferable to isomotion. So yeah, I would easily say anything that uses the original isomotion is an inferior dribbling mechanics.
Agreed 100%. I also want to make a point about the last statement I made about 2K20 appearance-wise with movement and 2K24 feel. There is a difference. Like, NBA 2K20 is the biggest eyesore when players are running up the court and when you do certain things on the floor. But the control is better, right? And the outcome makes more sense than it does on 2K24. When I have my hands on the sticks on 2K24, sure, sometimes things look better. Sure, when the players are running, it looks better, but it doesn't feel better than 2K20. So right now I'm enjoying playing 2K20 and 2K18 quite a bit more than 2K24.
And while we talk about shooting, let's also bring up free throw shooting, because 2K's free throw mechanics, either the original arrows, the green arrows, or certainly 2K5, ESPN NBA 2K5, I think the worst free throw mechanics. Although there are other games like Fox Sports NBA Basketball 2000, that one's pretty contrived. There's a lot of games that were doing some really weird stuff with free throw shooting, when it's just like, look what NBA Live was doing with the Team Eater for so many years. And that worked at the time. Whether you would do that these days, I'm not sure whether it would really play. But for the time, it was the best free throw mechanics. And everyone else was trying to do something else and try to reinvent the wheel. And it's such a bad idea.
Yeah, two of the worst are 2K5 and Inside Drive. Like the free throw mechanics on like NBA Inside Drive 2003 are absolutely so poor and terrible. I don't know what they were thinking. I think it's the whole thing of just trying to be different, right? Trying to be innovative at the cost of functionality.
Yeah, unnecessarily. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. So let's get to NBA Live, Andrew. So we just played NBA Live 07, so I'm sure that's going to be on your list quite a bit. But worst mechanics of all time from past NBA Live games. Go for it.
So yeah, I mean, you could say pretty much just NBA Live 07, right? I mean, that is the easy answer. But I will try and be creative with this. Shooting, I mean, yes, Live 07, there is such a small window to get a proper release that's not that awkward, stumbling late release. There's such a very quick release window to get that. But I'll also throw out there as an honourable mention, Live 08 for 360 and PS3, because that was the year they took away shot timing. So you basically just press the shot button, doesn't matter how long you hold it down. It's basically like playing on real field goal percent for everything, because it's just tendency and ratings based. And while it looks better than Live 07, and they also added some more, obviously, go-to moves and signature shooting forms, just not being able to control the shot, and not the timing doesn't matter at all. And before we go on, what's your take on that?
I think that there should always be an option. That's my opinion. I think there should always be real player field goal and user timing. I always choose user timing 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
Why? Because it's skill-based, right? When you take away user timing, it takes a big part of skill out of the game. Because now you no longer have to time your shot. And how many shots go up a game, Andrew? From the outside.
Over 100, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and especially, teams that shoot a high volume of three-pointers and whatnot. So I always choose user timing because I believe that is a part of actual true skill gap and competition. Now, if somebody wants to, choose real player field goal, I mean, that's fine. And whatnot, you can play the way that you want, and those games can still be fun and competitive. I just think it's not as skill-based when you do that.
I want to succeed or fail by my own merits, right?
Right, exactly. I don't want to take a shot where I release it perfectly from beyond the arc with a good shooter, and then the game just says, oh, it's your time to miss.
Yeah.
Right? And the games will do that. And it's all based on your percentages and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think there needs to be a combination of, how you time the shot and then, how the player is made from an attribute, tendency perspective and whatnot.
So dribbling and driving I'll actually put together as Live 07 once again. Just trying to make a move to the hoop. You're just constantly being hit with a brick wall defense. You can sometimes elude the defender. If you break their ankles, you trigger that ankle breaker animation. Pretty rare, and it is very clunky with the movement. And I'll just say again here, overall player movement, Live 07 as well. Just that engine, just what they were trying to do with the animations that year. It's just so terrible across the board. And of course, you try and pro hop into the lane, and they just get an easy strip, the CPU, or you'll get that offensive foul, as we said, or you just stumble and lose the ball and you turn it over. So driving is ridiculously hard, even on a lower difficulty level as well, because of that brick wall defense and the way it just knocks the ball out of your hands, or again bails itself out with the charging call. Passing. Again, 07 is not great, but I do have to mention the last generation of Lives, Live 14 through to 19, trying to feed the post or just even on the perimeter, the players moving out of position to catch the pass, or the pass just warps them out of position, just trying to run that play and swing the ball around, very difficult. So it's definitely worth an honorable mention at least. Steals and blocks, You know what, I'm just going to have to say Live 07 because that is such a rough game across the board. And I wish I had a more creative answer, but playing Live 07 has reminded me, once again, how rough it is. I've said before, Derek, that I thought Live 14 might have surpassed Live 07, as it were, as the worst game in the series. But having played 14 recently to get some screenshots, and having played Live 07 even more recently, yeah, I think I do have to say that 14, for all its flaws, and for as much of a disappointment as it was, is still slightly more solid on the sticks. And yeah, as I said, overall play movement, definitely 07. So it is very hard to pick another live game as the worst as far as mechanics and gameplay. If I was to say overall product, or if we were talking modes, then that's easier, because Live 07 actually does have some depth there that games like Live 14 don't. But we are just talking about on the sticks. So, you know what, as uncreative as it sounds, I'm going to have to say 07. It really is that bad.
For a AAA company, how did Live 07 for the 360 get through quality assurance?
Yeah.
Like, how did it make it to production? I'm still floored by that. I don't understand. I wish we could have somebody on the show that explains it. They probably don't want to talk about it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I wish we could have somebody on the show that was like, yeah, well, it was reviewed this way, and people thought about it this way, and this is why, etc. But I just can't see the how. So here are my responses. Again, the question for the community was create the worst basketball video game of all time using NBA Live mechanics from past games. And then we did the same exercise with 2K. So it's really tough to choose another game from the NBA Live series from NBA Live 07, but I was able to do that when thinking about all the mechanics separately. So for NBA Live, it starts off actually with Live 07 for shooting. So the shooting in NBA Live 07 is so bad because of how bad the animation transitions are. And it's so hard to tell when your player should be releasing the ball because the shooting is just so glitchy. Fadeaways look terrible. Straight up and down shots look terrible. Everything shooting looks terrible in NBA Live 07 for the 360. Dribbling, I actually went, with before right stick dribbling. And I think that Live 2001 and Live 2002 stand out for me as frustrating from a dribbling perspective because of the amount of delay and the awkwardness to that dribbling, because it was part of that new motion system that was established in Live 2001. And then, they only had that motion system for 2 years before they abandoned it because of its flaws for NBA Live 2003. And then they obviously implemented right stick dribbling then. Passing, I'm actually going to go with NBA Live 19. And the reason I'm going to go with Live 19 is because of the delay. Just doing something as simple as trying to move the ball on the perimeter in that game stinks. Like, I don't think they got passing right overall from NBA Live 14 all the way up to NBA Live 19. But I'm going to choose NBA Live 19 here because they didn't learn their lesson, right? From the other PS4 NBA Live titles. Like, the catching animations are super heavy. The passing animations themselves are super heavy. It's super blah in that game. Driving, it's a tie with Live 07 and Live 08, with at Live 07 probably taking the lead because as far as the worst driving mechanics of all time, just because of how bad the animations are when you get to the hoop. Right?
Yeah.
They cleaned up some of that with NBA Live 08. But the rocket dunks, the layups that don't even hit air, the dunks where you don't even hit the rim and then the ball just falls out of your hands, the missing layups right off the front of the rim completely wide open. There were 2 layups in our game where the computer went to the hoop and they were wide open, and they shot a layup that looked like a beach ball that flew off the glass and didn't even hit the rim. Just I like I said, I don't even know how that stuff got into production. Steals, I'm going to actually, this one might surprise people, but I'm going to go with NBA Live 2004. And I think the reason why I'm going with Live 2004 is because of the constant forced double teams where people drop the ball. Like, it happens so often, and that suction in that game, I think, is one of its biggest weaknesses. And it's also so easy to just have the ball transfer to your hand in the passing lanes. constant unrealistic weird steals and weird frustrating moments in that game when it comes to steal mechanics. Blocks, Live 19, I'm going to say it right out because it's so canned. Very few blocks in NBA Live 19 happen where you felt like it was organic, right? And I could say probably the same thing for Live 18. But I just feel like shot blocking overall in Live 19 is just too canned to enjoy. And then overall player movement, I got to go with Live 07. It's the worst player movement, worst animation transitions, etc., possibly in basketball video game history.
Once again, I have to agree, and you've done a much better job than I have of looking at the series as a whole and not just focusing on 07. And once again, you bring up an interesting point with the early 2000s NBA Lives, and once again, I'm thinking only of right-stick dribbling, and before that we did have some awkward dribbling moves when they rebuilt the game for 2001 and 2002, and certainly you get stuck in those animations. If you started dribbling out of bounds, you couldn't pass, you couldn't interrupt those animations, so that was definitely a problem there. So that's a great point about those early mechanics. I guess I overlooked them because they are so primitive in a way, certainly to what they would become, that I'm thinking more about the more advanced, once we actually got right-stick dribbling and the games actually gave us proper control over those moves. But no, that's an excellent point, absolutely. And 07's shooting, yeah, just that, well, as I said, that small window to actually get something that looks like, not just looks good, but also gives you the best chance of making the shot. We made a couple of shots in that game that I was very surprised to see them go in, because they were not the ideal animation, such as it is, the one that actually looks halfway decent when you can nail that very small timing window to do that. So, yeah, I mean, 07 is very easy across the board. I said 07 for blocks because it feels very stiff going up for them. Trying to get a chase down block, I tried that a couple of times. I don't know why I kept trying to do it in our game. I should have given up after the first couple of times, but just out of habit, you just try and do things in that game that you do in much better games, and it doesn't work out. But Live 19, yeah, the canned blocks, some of them they look really nice, but as you say, it doesn't feel as satisfying because they're not organic.
Exactly. I also want to point out, Andrew and I had a session last year where it was Keon Dooling versus TJ Ford on NBA 2K7. What a blast.
What a much better game, yeah.
Were great. Exactly. And you got to think, NBA Live 07, just how bad it was. It was competing against a very competent, very solid, deep game in NBA 2K7. So, of course, Live was not going to be able to compete from that point on, right? I mean, like, NBA 2K7 and, 2K8 compared to Live 08, just the quality is that much better in the 2K games. So you got to give a shout out to them back then.
Well, that's the big thing that 2K did, is that even if those mechanics weren't the best, they continued to build on what they had. They weren't chopping and changing. They weren't throwing everything out and trying to reinvent the wheel. They weren't trying to bring in a new motion system or new tech every year and just rebuild the game from scratch. And look what that did to NBA Live over the years, and then finally reaching ahead with the attempted revamp with NBA Elite 11.
Exactly. Also, I want to point out, I almost put NBA Live 10 down for passing just because of the alley-oops. Overall, that game has pretty good passing mechanics, but those alley-oops are some of the worst in AAA video game history. Like, those alley-oops, it doesn't make any sense. Like you said, it's better in the demo for that game, but they stink when it comes to, like, the full release.
And once again, you do notice these things. The overall passing, as you say, is pretty solid in Live 10, pretty good, but the alley-oops, compared to the demo, compared to other games, just very disappointing. And of course, since we brought up free throws once again, I would have to say what they were trying to do around the time of Live 06, Live 07 for Xbox 360, when they had the down-up on that right stick. And I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to simulate the shooting motion on the right stick, that you pull down to start the shot, and then you've got to aim it as you move forward for the strength. And I get it, and I can make it work, but it is my least favorite of the NBA Live free throw shooting mechanics. Just too easy. If you were just a hair off, it just goes awry, and the timing can be very, very finicky as well. Compared to, again, 2K6 or 2K7, pull down on the stick and let it go at the right time. Of course, on PlayStation 3, 2K did try and bring in that 6-axis shooting where you're tilting the controller. That was a terrible one as well. That didn't last long. Of course, if you didn't have a 6-axis controller, you couldn't even use the motion controls, so that was also a bad idea. Again, just trying to innovate in a way that you can see it's creative, you can see what they're going for, but, keep it simple.
Yeah. Once again, it goes back to thinking more about, bringing something new as opposed to what functions properly.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, that deteriorates somebody's gaming experience with those poor implementations. Sure, it's something they can promote as a new feature, right? But that doesn't mean that it's going to be a hit with consumers. And like you said, that 6-axis thing, for NBA 2K, that was the tilting the controller, what a terrible implementation and terrible idea. But Andrew, let's see what the community has to say about the worst mechanics in 2K and Live's histories.
So let's start out with NBA 2K, and Bucky T says shooting 2K21 to 2K24, dribbling 2K23 and 24, passing 2K18, driving 2K18, so notes that it's OP, which it absolutely was, steals 2K23 and 24, blocks 2K21 to 23, notes that they were canned blocks, play movement 2K18 to 2K24, and then says, basically the whole motion system from 2K18 to present creates the worst 2K of all time. And I don't think he's going to get a lot of argument from us.
No, I mean, his list is pretty in line with, what we were saying, and he displays a lot of the same frustrations with the motion systems after NBA 2K17.
And Nate Starshow says, for free throws, 2K1 to 2K5, absolute game-killing mechanic. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the green arrow approach, but compared to ESPN NBA 2K5, I would actually prefer it. That was terrible.
I agree. I can do the green arrows. It even makes more sense somehow in my brain than that 2K5 mechanic where you have to get the ball in the middle of the two arrows that are supposed to line up with the ball in the center. I don't even know how to describe it. It's so stupid. Like, it's not a good free throw mechanic.
Devin Williams says shooting 2K17, dribbling 2K15, passing 2K20, driving 2K18, steals 2K16, blocks 2K13, and overall player movement 2K14. So some interesting choices there. I think I'm inclined to agree with blocks for 2K13 and driving 2K18, 2K20 possibly for passing as well. But otherwise, no, I would have to respectfully disagree. I do like those other games.
Yeah, I haven't disagreed with anybody more, actually. But at the same time, he's entitled to his opinion. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
He might enjoy the newer 2Ks more. Like, I think 2K17 might be the best shooting in 2K's history. It's really enjoyable. I love it. And as far as the steal mechanics at NBA 2K16, I've always liked them. I think that they're a lot better than the newer games. But yeah, he must just like the new motion system, and that's fine.
Shrek 2 fanboy says 2K21 last gen shooting, 17's speed boost dribbling, maybe 2K20 as well, can't remember which was worse, 13's infinitely accurate passing for full court cherry picks, 13 drives with unblockable dunks, 21 bump steals, 20 blocks, infinite vertical glitch, and the movement of 2K2. And I think 13 for blocks is definitely a popular choice because, again, not being able to block dunks. Look, I took advantage of that playing my career, Derek, when I wanted to get some easy buckets, obviously. But speaking more objectively and critically, a bad idea.
Seems like everybody remembers the 2K13 blocking dunk and layup issue.
Yeah.
As far as 2K2, that's interesting because I was talking to my brother about it because I was revisiting the original NBA 2K through NBA 2K2, and I actually like the player movement better on the original 2K than what they put forward on 2K1 and 2K2. So it is interesting that he brought that up. I don't think that the player movement is the worst in the game's history in 2K2. I can still find enjoyment in it. I think overall it makes sense. But I did find that interesting.
And our last one for NBA 2K comes from Big Perk at SweetJones_OTF. Shooting 2K5, dribbling 2K7, passing 2K6, driving 2K8, steals 2K18, blocks 2K19, and overall player movement 2K14. And then he puts a laughing emoji and says, "True answer, 2K7." Yeah, you got me there, Perk. Yeah, 2K14 obviously not belonging on that list. Reasonable answers all around.
Yeah, he didn't like the motion system and overall mechanics of the 2Ks from 2K5 to like 2K9. That's what I get out of this. And that's understandable as well, because I think that, once they implemented right stick dribbling in 2K13, got more animations in there, and, the series kind of matured, that the games did get better overall. Like you and I have stated, our favorite NBA 2K games of all time come from 2K13 through 2K17.
And this does raise an interesting point that quite often, as we've said before, people erroneously say, oh, Live was just terrible already by the mid-2000s and 2K was doing everything better. But not everything about those mid-2000s 2Ks was quite there yet. It was getting more positive buzz than Live at the time. It was starting to catch up in sales. And, of course, by the mid-2000s with 06 and definitely 07, Live was really starting to slip and lose that ground to 2K. But those mid-2000s 2Ks, especially with dribbling mechanics and so forth, they did have their issues. And as far as free throws, I think that's a great example of how people will say, once again, get good or adjust to these new mechanics. But we've seen innovations over the years that have not panned out. We've seen bad ideas coming to these games, trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to innovate in a way that they don't need to, trying to fix what isn't broken. So they're still doing that today. So it's not just a case of get good. It's not just a case of adjust. I mean, yes, there's always going to be that learning curve, and there are times to innovate and to adjust to that and to learn the new mechanics. But we've seen bad ideas over the years. So it's not just a case of, oh, it's new, you're not good, and you don't like it. That sometimes some ideas are bad.
You know what new implementation, I've talked about this on the show before, just kind of drives me nuts, and I think it's not good, is the takeover and team takeover stuff that goes in the new 2Ks. I'm playing NBA 2K24, and all 5 of the players on my team have like red circles under them, because apparently I have like team takeover or something, and it's just like these huge circles under my players, and apparently it makes my team that much better to be able to be on team takeover. What is this doing in a sim game, or a game is marketed as sim? It looks absolutely ridiculous. And obviously we know that the takeover system in NBA 2K can be super overpowering, and your player starts doing things that he couldn't do in real life, or no person could do in real life, at least not for that extended period of time and everything. I think the takeover system, like the implementation of that, the execution of that, I think is poor.
Oh, absolutely. And as we've said before, does feel very arcadey in a sim title.
Right, exactly. When I think of, Team Takeover, I think of Team Fire.
Yes.
In like NBA Jam on Fire edition, right?
So jumping over to NBA Live now, once again, Nate Starshow says, shooting Live 08 for Xbox 360, and also says Live 08 for Xbox 360 for dribbling and passing as well. Driving says NBA Live 2005. And steals, NBA Live 2002, blocks, NBA Live 2002, and overall play movement, NBA Live 2005, and notes Live 2005 defenders are always faster than the offensive players. And that was a big problem in Live 2005, absolutely. The chase down blocks, although they are cool, although we want them in the game, it was way too easy to catch up to players on the break.
Yeah, because they didn't keep running either.
Yeah, that too.
A run a break, and your guy always stops to catch a pass, which is just, they improved on that so much in NBA Live 06. And I've said it before, going back and revisiting Live 05 and Live 2005 and Live 06, I realized how much more sound on the sticks Live 06 actually is. And a big reason for that is because of the player movement on both sides of the ball and how the AI works in those two games. I can enjoy both games, though. I will say that. I noticed that he called out NBA Live 2002. It didn't call out NBA Live 2001. Now, he is the Live 01 legend, right? Him and Roger. So, yeah, I wouldn't have expected that game to make their lists.
And once again, Big Perk, Sweet Jones _OTF, shooting 07 for Xbox 360, dribbling 06 for Xbox 360, passing 09, driving 07, steals 06, blocks 10, overall play movement 06. I have a higher opinion of 06 on both versions of 06, both 360 and PC, PS2, Xbox. Driving '07, I mean, that is very easy call to make. Passing '09, yeah, I see that as well. Those heavy catches, those heavy catch animations. Steals '06, I know you're going to disagree with that one, but no, I do see where he's coming from with a lot of those.
I do. I think that Live 06, though, we've gone back and revisited those multiple times, Live 06 and Live 07, and I think that Live 06 is much stronger from an animation perspective and on the sticks. And actually, it's better graphically, too. The Live 07 took a bit of a hit from a graphical perspective as well. So, yeah, I think higher of Live 06 for the Xbox 360 gen than he does.
And we've got a couple of answers for NBA Live in the NLSC Discord. Juicy Shackmeat says, dribbling, stealing, and passing, Live 2001 PS1 version. Shooting, blocking, and driving, NBA Live 99 PS1 version. And overall play movement, Live 07 previous and next-gen versions.
Yeah, see, I like NBA Live 99. I think it's very similar to Live 2000. Playing those back-to-back, just the mechanics are so similar that I can just really get in to both games. I will say this. As everybody knows, the cover athlete for NBA Live 99 is Antoine Walker, right? And the shooting motion in that game where the player you use is shooting the ball like from his forehead and the way he's positioning his arms, that is Antoine Walker,
yes.
Right? They're doing his shot. But if you remember correctly, in real life, Antoine Walker is a set shooter. So every single one of his shots, whether it's in the mid-range, behind the three, etc., he gets about an inch off the ground. But in NBA Live 99, every shot you have this high vertical, right? So it's never looked right, and it's never exactly felt awesome either. I don't hate the shooting in the games, but I will say that I can see where somebody would be like, I'm not a fan of it because Antoine Walker never had a great looking shot anyway. But when you add a bunch of, height to his jump on the shot, it looks even worse.
Oh, definitely. And as soon as I saw Juicy Shackmeat post the shooting for Live 99 and that generation of lives, I knew you'd bring that up because that absolutely is an issue. Michael Jordan's vertical on his jumper with Antoine Walker's shooting form is not exactly a realistic combination.
Yeah, it looks bad. It looks bad and it can feel bad.
And finally, Pep says NBA Live 2001 had clunky mechanics in basically everything, with apologies to Nate and Roger there. Yeah, I mean, it was rebuilt as they went to the new programming language. A lot of the original team left. They moved on at that point. So, yeah, it definitely had some problems.
Rough game. You and I, once again, it's a game we've played recently.
I kind of like it, though. I do like it.
Yeah. There's this fascination with it, right?
Sure.
That I talked about before. And then there's also this challenge of getting used to the mechanics. And then when you get used to them, like when Nate and I had our co-op session using the Orlando Magic, and we were throwing alley-oops to each other from like Grant Hill to T-Mac and whatnot. When you get used to the mechanics and you're able to either conquer the CPU or do something great on the floor in general, like you feel good about yourself, right? You're like, I did it on this new game with this new motion system in this game that's pretty rough. So yeah, I think that Live 2001 was rough, but it has its good points.
So thank you to everybody who responded to that prompt. Always interesting to see what people think are the worst and best mechanics in games and cobbling them together to make the best or worst. And, we do have differing opinions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love how the honesty of the community and kind of like the difference of opinions that we're hearing. Like some people are fond of, like we are, like 2K13 through 2K17 for the 2K series, and some are more fond of the classic titles, or they're more fond of the new motion system. And I think that it's really cool to hear everybody's opinions. I think that the commonalities are interesting though, as well. Like 2K13, right? Like everybody just remembers how bad the blocking mechanics were in that game. So you see that brought up constantly. So that's something we can all agree on.
It is really cool, as you said, that people do have those memories of 2K13. That was the game where you could dunk all the time and just never get blocked. And we have those memories about games of all genres that we just remember, this is the game you could do that. And there's just all those idiosyncrasies about the games we just remember so well. And with basketball games, so many of them and coming out every year. They talk about sports games basically being an annual roster update for full price, and we've talked about how there's some truth to that sometimes, but these little changes that they make in the mechanics when you are a hardcore basketball gamer or sports gamer in general, that you do notice these things.
Yeah, I'll also say that one thing NBA 2K did a lot better than NBA Live was come out strong on new generations of consoles.
Yes.
Live 2001 for PS2, super rough, pretty disappointing. NBA Live 06 for Xbox 360 was not reviewed particularly well, didn't have the depth of the PC, PS2 version, etc. Then Live 14, the whole disappointment with that. But then you go back to the 2K series and you see what they did with NBA 2K6 for the 360, which is a really big hit, and they kept the depth and features from the last gen, so they didn't take steps backwards there. And then you look at what they did with NBA 2K14, right out of the gate, wowed everybody, OMG'd everybody, Andrew, etc. With the PS4 version of that. So I think that 2K just did a lot better at hitting the ground running on new generations.
They absolutely did, and those first impressions last. First impressions matter. Look how many people played the demo of Live in the past generation and said, "Oh, I'm not really feeling this. This doesn't blow me away. I'm going to stick with 2K." So even as 2K were erring with some of the things they did with 2K18, whether it was the gameplay mechanics or certainly the greed with the microtransactions and the shift to the neighborhood and that open world approach to my career and how it's going in that MMO RPG direction, even with all of that, they played the Live 18 demo and said, "Oh, look, this doesn't really grab me. This doesn't impress me." So you absolutely have to make that impression. And to your point, when you launch on a new generation, you do absolutely have to blow people away, and that's where they failed with Live 14. And even 2K with 2K21. Sometimes I think, am I just getting more cynical as I get older? But 2K21 didn't really blow us away.
It did not. It's not the jump people were expecting, right?
No.
It didn't wow the majority of gamers, and that's reflected in the reviews that we've seen, correct? Like the actual user reviews and whatnot, and the Metacritic user scores. And so, I hope 2K can turn it around, but as you can tell from my comments on this episode, I'm very disappointed in NBA 2K24.
And that's a sentiment that I share as well. And it is why we've been playing our old favourites and why we will continue to do that. And, of course, share that footage with you. Some great videos coming up. And, of course, Derek, next week is our 200th episode together on the NLSC Podcast and the 500th episode of the podcast overall. So, yeah, we've been around a while and got a lot of content already, but we're going to keep going because we love doing this.
500 episodes is insane. But I am super proud of what we've been able to do week in and week out for basically 200 episodes straight.
Yeah.
As far as, releasing every week and whatnot, and, coming up with great material and, revisiting games together to talk about on the show and all of that stuff. I hope our listeners realize that we have a true passion and love for basketball gaming.
Definitely, and we appreciate you for tuning in each and every week and taking an interest in all of our content and, of course, interacting with us with these mailbag segments and weekly discussion topics. So stay tuned for our 500th episode and 200th together as a duo. Lots more fun to come, and we will mark the occasion with some fun stuff as well. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week and every week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media, so we can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our aforementioned content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can find me on X at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.